I think there's a few things. One is good, high quality decision making, less haste, more speed. Another aspect is good listening. However much you know, what you can learn is always far greater.
Sam Tayan, experienced managing director, innovator, and sales leader with a demonstrated history of working in the computer software industry. His goal is to shape the future of tech and work to make innovative developments and tech entrepreneurialism.
I'll tell you something, and it shows you how the world has shifted. I was asked the question, when was the last time I wrote 3 sentences? And I couldn't remember the last time I had written with a pen on paper 3 sentences. If I'd asked myself that question just a few years ago, can you imagine going 6 months without holding a pen?
Do you think there could be a tech company fully run and operated by just AI?
The internet revolution was not about the tech, it was about the mobilization of capital. All of a sudden, the Middle East was on the map.
Sam Tayan, welcome to Zeno Talks.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to be here, Omar.
So, Sam, before we go into all the different questions that we have for you today, tell us a little bit about your background and how you started it in this world of technology where not a lot of people ventured in at your time, but you decided to take this very unusual track, and here you are today.
So I was always you're quite right. So I graduated from university quite a long time ago. In the mid-80s approximately, and there wasn't a whole lot of technology there at the time. It's a really niche activity to be interested in that, and we used to call it, at my time it was more electronics than anything else. So I had that interest. I was lucky enough when I graduated from university to go and work with British Aerospace in Manchester, United Kingdom. And what I did was I did the avionics, the communication systems of aircraft. So the electronics inside airplanes, it combined 2 of my loves. I loved airplanes and I loved technology. So that was my kind of start. That's the beginning of my enthusiasm.
Okay. So from BAE Systems, which is obviously a very large enterprise, where did you go after that? I think a lot of the times, my uncle worked in aviation, and he told me, he's like, once you're in aviation, you almost never want to leave. So what convinced you to take the next step?
That's actually a very good observation from your uncle. So when I was in British Aerospace, you're absolutely right. There was a section of people who worked alongside me, my colleagues, who were absolute flight enthusiasts. They used to fly gliders at the weekend, and they loved anything to do with aircraft. And many of them had been in the business for years and years and years. And I found that much as I loved the aviation side of things, the aviation technology side of things, it was a little bit the pure tech, so computers and measuring instruments, that I was more interested in. So one fine day I was sat, and I saw at the time, the Times newspaper used to publish tech ads or advertisements on, I think it was a Thursday or Wednesday, I can't remember now. And I saw an advert for a very senior job at Hewlett Packard at the time, and I thought, I'm going to apply for that. I was 20 something, 21 or something at the time, way out of my depth. But I thought, I'm going to have some fun. And there was no email. You used to type up a CV and send it in the post. And I typed up a CV and I sent it in the post. And I got a call out of the blue from a guy called Nick Rossiter, who sadly has passed away. And Nick Rossiter basically was attracted by the fact that I put on my CV that I spoke Arabic.
Oh wow, okay.
Interesting. Which at the time was a niche thing. This is 1988. Or earlier, 1987. 1987. And he drove up to Manchester, and he was actually working at the time at Hewlett Packard in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And he basically said, I'm not interviewing for the job you applied for. How about you come and join us in Riyadh at HP at the time? And I was intrigued. We followed through, and I ended up joining.
So you moved from the UK
absolutely.
To Saudi Arabia?
I moved first of all to Scotland. I spent a period of time in South Queensferry, which is right on the waterfront next to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
HP had a factory there, a division, so I worked there for a period of time, and then they moved me out to Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And it was a different time. The major, one of the things I used to always tell people when they asked me what's it like in Riyadh, I used to say there's no traffic.
Yeah.
Well, that's changed.
I'm sure. And you know, it's crazy that you moved there at that time because, I mean, probably the biggest company there, I mean, obviously till now is Saudi Aramco. So you wouldn't think a lot of people would go there like with HP. You would think mostly anything to do with energy. So all the oil and gas companies, you know, you'd think the BPs, the Oxys and the rest of them, right?
Yes.
But that's really interesting. So you went to Saudi Arabia?
Yes, I went to Saudi Arabia. HP had a kind of a pioneer presence there at the time.
Okay.
There were very few tech companies who even existed. So computers were made by 2 or 3 companies at that time. IBM, HP, Digital. And it was, you know, it was really different times.
Yeah.
As I said, there was no traffic.
Yeah.
There was, and during that period that I was there in Saudi Arabia, the Gulf War broke out.
Oh, wow.
So I got to experience that, essentially.
That's interesting. Were you probably like asked by your government to leave Saudi Arabia because the war broke out? And because I remember Saudi Arabia, I mean, they felt threatened that probably Iraq was going to go into Saudi Arabia next after Kuwait, right?
Yeah, there was. I mean, we were not asked to leave. We were handed out gas masks, so I went and got myself a free gas mask.
No.
Yeah, I thought I had it until recently, but I think my mom threw it out or something.
No.
But it was a period of drama.
Yeah.
You know, I remember we woke up one day and there was airplanes overhead, and it was a period of, you know, real change and drama at the time. And I was a youngster.
Yeah.
You know?
So you didn't think like, oh, I want to leave the country. You just wanted to stay there for the action and see like what would happen next.
I mean, these were history-making times.
Yeah.
You know? And at that time, and I was a keen photographer.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, maybe I'll see. So I didn't actually see anything of major interest, but I thought, you know.
Yeah.
But those were very different times till now. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. So you moved to Saudi Arabia. You sat in Saudi Arabia despite the Gulf War, and then what happened next?
So we went through the Gulf War, and as I said, these were very interesting times indeed.
Yeah.
You know, seeing fighter jets overhead and all that.
Yeah.
And then I moved back to the UK. I'll tell you, it was actually an interesting story. I went to, at the time, Saudi Aramco as an HP sales guy. It was probably about 1990. And HP had some fabulous workstations, which were scientific computers.
Okay.
And we were trying to sell them to Aramco, and the guys at Aramco said, no, we are buying Sun.
Okay.
I thought, who the heck are Sun?
Yeah.
Never heard of them in my life.
Yeah.
There was no Googling, there was nothing like that.
Yeah.
We did have email though.
Yeah.
But I discovered that Sun Microsystems was, you know, the up and coming computer company. So I reached out at that time, first of all, to a guy called John Barnes, who was based in Italy, who was with Sun Microsystems. I called him on the telephone.
Okay.
Anyway, to cut a long story short, I ended up going back to the UK and working in Bagshot in Surrey.
Okay.
And I worked for Sun Microsystems Emerging Markets Group, which was based there.
Yeah.
And we covered everywhere, which was not a big European country. So we covered Russia. I went to Russia, very cold, in winter.
Yeah.
I came to Dubai for the first time ever.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay, that's interesting. But I want to ask you this: before you moved to Sun, how did Neil? Was it? How did they feel about you moving to the competition?
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's what we want to know.
I mean, it was, as I said, at that time there was no LinkedIn. I told people I'm going back to the UK and I'm going back to Sun. You know, they wanted me to stay a little longer.
Yeah.
But I just got married, and I thought, let's try something a bit different.
Yeah, okay. So, that's really interesting. So Sun Microsystems, tell
Yes.
us about that journey quickly, and then what happened next.
So I was really lucky. I was quite fortunate. So after I joined Sun, well, 2 or 3 things happened after I joined Sun. First of all, we came to the very same Saudi Aramco, who I had seen a little bit earlier when I was with HP, suddenly made a big purchase of Sun Microsystems computers. And so all of a sudden, the Middle East was on the map. Our CEO was called Scott McNeely. Famous guy.
Yeah.
And Scott McNeely sent me a note, I remember, or was it either to me or my boss, which was basically, he had heard that there was a lot of business in Kuwait. Go to Kuwait, check out the business. And so I was dispatched on my first trip to the Middle East, which included a stopover in Dubai. I had never been here before. It was a much different place.
Yeah.
Much different place.
More desert, less buildings.
Yeah, less buildings. But the friendliness and the warmth were the same. And when I got back from Dubai, and Dubai was literally a couple of days stop. When I got back from Dubai, they had a reorg in Sun, and I met the new vice president, a guy called Tim Dwyer. And Tim said, okay, we're going to move everybody out of London, of the UK. We're going to open offices in different parts of the emerging market. There's Moscow. And he said, Sam, where should we open an office in the Middle East? And I just said Dubai.
Oh, wow.
You know, no great science at the time. I just thought, I like that. So let's go to Dubai.
What made you think about Dubai? Why? Because you were in Saudi Arabia before that, but what made you think Dubai at the time?
I met somebody here, and I can't remember what actually catalyzed it in my mind, but this was the beginning of the development of inward investment and things like that. So, and I can't remember who I met, but I met somebody, and it planted a seed in my mind. There was not a single technology company, with the exception of Oracle.
Which obviously eventually ended up buying Sun.
Yes, which eventually ended up buying Sun. Oracle had two guys. I had a guy called John Major. Who was the MD, and I had Hussam Dajani. Hussam Dajani predated John Major. And in fact, it was Hussam I met here. And then it was in. So I told them Dubai, and they said, right. And they just wrote it down on a piece of paper. And they said, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Moscow? Do you want to go to Dubai? I thought, I don't like the cold. I'll go to Dubai. And we opened the office in 1991.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, okay, so let me ask you this. Now, you know, we talked a little bit about your journey into all of these different like big tech firms and everything else. You know, what essentially in these companies, Sam, you've worked within, you know, the HP, the Sun, and you know, Oracle and everybody else. What are some of the key learnings that you've got from these companies? Like, what makes them very special and be these giants in the technology business that they're in versus like smaller businesses? But what is the thing about these companies that made them stand out and essentially be different from good to great, like as Jim Collins said in his book?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is good, high quality decision making. I think high quality decision making is so key. Being able to see the horizon around you, and make very good decisions, whether it be investment decisions, whether it be people decisions, whether it be any aspect of decision making. High quality decision making, I think, is important. They always say, less haste, more speed, and that's an important characteristic.
I like that. Less haste, more speed.
Right. And another aspect is good listening. You know, I think however much you know, what you can learn is always far greater in any situation. So the more you listen, and that includes listening to customers. You know, when customers are complaining, something inside you wants to be defensive, but actually maybe listening benefits you more. And these companies are all great listeners in a way.
Do you think you had like obviously an edge because you were an electronic engineer? Does that give you like some sort of a strong edge in these companies because you studied a certain background, or do you feel that people from different backgrounds could be just as successful as you have been? You know?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, when I remember, I think in the early days, most of the people came from a very technical background. So if you look at the early people in this industry, they were engineers and things like that. I think over time it's changed, and people come from many backgrounds because the technology and the application becomes mainstream. And there are some features such as hard work, you know, applying yourself, being a good listener, which really cut across knowledge sets.
Okay, so clearly, like one of the things that you see now is there's this big hype around all of these big technology companies all the time. I mean, they're always making headlines for better or for worse. Clearly, you can see there's a lot of regulation around these companies. So what has really like put these technology companies into that spotlight from what they were before and what they are now? Before, they looked like they used to just be like, sitting in the background. They used to always work in the shadows. Now they're at the forefront of almost every type of regulation, all the different policies that government will be issuing, whether it's for the public or for the industries.
And it is amazing, as you said, how something which used to be a niche activity, not many people paid attention, is suddenly right at the center of everything. I mean, a lot of that has to do with obviously with smartphones, because everybody has a smartphone, everybody buys, sells, books things on smartphones and so on. And I think over time people start to understand whether it's the importance of data and data privacy. I remember when we first started, there was no thought of that. The idea of data having a value or data privacy was something which people didn't even think of. And so with time, what happens is people become aware of risks as well as benefits, and that allows things like regulation to come in.
Okay, so obviously all of these businesses were started by people, but now with progress that AI and machine learning and quantum computing, all of these things that are making headway, do you think there could be a tech company created by tech on its own, and then just like, I don't know, a company fully run and operated by just AI?
Wow, wouldn't that be something? I don't know, but I mean, you think about it and you think this is, I mean, maybe
I'm asking the electronics engineer here. Do you think that there could be some algorithms put together and then, because I mean, if you already have like generative AI now that's already feeding off of all this information that's been put in for God knows how long, and then people are already prompting questions saying, generate, a code for me to produce some app or whatever. Do you think it could create a full-on company and maybe as big as any of the businesses that you've worked at?
Oh, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, it's you think about it and you think, wow, I guess things like this may be possible. It's difficult to tell. I'll tell you something, and it shows you how the world has shifted.
Okay.
When I was at school, one of the case studies we had in sustainability and good planning and good management was the paper industry.
Okay.
Right? And we were taught at school how, I think it's in Finland or Norway, I can't remember, one Scandinavian company, every time they chop down a tree, they plant two.
Yes. Yeah.
You remember that from school as well?
Yeah.
And the idea was it will allow everybody to keep up with the demand for paper.
Yeah.
I was asked a question the other day by somebody as to when was the last time I wrote three continuous sentences, proper full sentences.
Okay.
And I couldn't remember the last time I'd written with a pen on paper 3 sentences. And I thought, wow, it's been months.
Yeah.
Unimaginable. If I'd asked myself that question just a few years ago, can you imagine going 6 months without holding a pen?
You would have
not a chance.
Not a chance, exactly.
Not a chance. But I'll ask you that question. How long since you held a pen?
I actually I don't remember myself. Maybe I signed something, but actually I was just in Egypt over the weekend and I just signed off like the bill for the room, and that's it,
That's it,
But that's it. That's really interesting. So I mean, okay, so you've had one. I did not know this about you. That was a big milestone, Sam. Like the fact that you told Sun Microsystem to open in the UAE. That's a big deal. I think you should be very proud of yourself, and I'm sure your family is too.
Yes.
But I know that you're not short of a lot of other very big achievements. Like, what are some of the other big achievements or milestones that you have achieved in your time?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned Sun. I said we were the second tech company of any form in this country. There was Oracle, Sam Dajani before me, and then that was us. And we opened next to the post office in a building called the Zabil Post Office in what seemed like the best building in the world at the time.
Yeah. And by the way, a lot of people have to understand this. We didn't have the Dubai Internet City that we have now, which didn't obviously exist, at that time, the anchor was like Microsoft that came first. But go on.
It wasn't, I think it was MasterCard.
Oh, really?
Yes. And Microsoft came quite later because Microsoft started was slightly different. They were in Bahrain at first.
Oh, okay.
Trying to remember the guy's name, and the leader was in Bahrain. They had a representative in Saudi Arabia called Omar bin Talib. This is all ancient history.
Yeah.
And then they came to the UAE, but it was a bit later.
Okay.
It was a bit later. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I've been privileged with a number of companies, whether it be VMware, whether it be other companies like Zoom, to have initiated them and started them up.
Yeah.
Here in the region, here in this country.
Yeah.
So it's been quite privileged, and I love this business. It's a fantastic business because you can see over time the progress like nothing else. I don't think there's anything like the tech business where you can really see the things move and things change so quickly.
What aspect of the tech business do you really like? Because when you say tech, it could be very broad. Yes. There's lots of different verticals within it. There's a lot of different branches. What's the part for you that you think, this is where I thrive in?
So I think I thrive in, the building and growing.
Okay.
Part of it. So building and growing and the kind of pioneering aspect I thrive on. I think that's something which I really, really enjoy. And I enjoy the positive impact that can have.
Okay.
Because you can see, whether it's convenience for consumers, whether you can see it's making businesses more efficient.
Yeah.
All of these things, and you feel a bit proud. You look back over your shoulder. In many of the organizations I've been privileged to work for, I look back over my shoulder over 3-4 years, and I say, we built something. We've notched up some major milestones.
Yeah.
I was a very proud moment was as we were pulling out of COVID here in the UAE.
Yeah.
It was New Year's, and I've forgotten which year, but it was either 2020 or 2021. It might have been 2020.
Okay.
We did a collaboration with Omar, and we lit up Burj Khalifa on New Year's Day, and we beamed it around the world on Zoom, and we lit it up in Zoom colors.
Yeah.
And that was a very proud moment. It was bringing together, an iconic developer like Omar with ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's moments like that where you think this was really great.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to ask you as well when it comes to this industry and then talent, having the right talent, like all of these companies you just talked about, they all come from the West. Essentially, you do have these type of companies that also rise out of India and China. When do you think we will have the same sort of like wave of these giant companies coming out of the Middle East?
I think it's absolutely imminent. I think several things which you've seen, and I think it's probably already happening as we speak. A few years ago, you couldn't have imagined some of the tech companies which have emerged. For example, Soup.com, for example, Careem, for example, some of the great successes in the mergers and acquisitions market, which are homegrown. The homegrown pool of talent is just fabulous. When I first came here all those years ago, there was a limited number of people who had experience in this sector. It's changed tremendously. There's a fabulous pool of talent. The Arabic availability of software and products has changed dramatically. It used to be, it used to be quite clunky. There used to be specialist computers. There used to be, specialist companies.
Yeah.
And also that expands the talent pool as well. And I see today many companies in this part of the world which are cutting edge in terms of their capabilities. So I think it's happening. I mean, Silicon Valley obviously is where very, very significant companies emerge. But I think, this part of the world has really got its place.
Yeah. Where do you feel there's room for improvement when it comes to this industry here? Whether is it doing something with the education system, or do you feel like there needs to be maybe a little bit more awareness? There needs to be maybe a better fund or whatever. Because one of the arguments, Sam, that's happened for the longest time is access to funding on R&D particularly here, or the amount of money that's put into R&D is very, very minuscule compared to how it is in the West and other places. The opportunity given to people to try to fail is not as the same kind of opportunity you get out in other parts of the world. Yes, there's a lot of talk about it. They say, yeah, and fine, it's okay to make a mistake, but then, yeah, you make that mistake and you probably never get a second chance. So people are still like risk averse.
Yes.
So these are just some of my own learnings in this space. But what do you think could be done?
I think you make a good point about capital. That's a really, really good point. At the beginning of the internet revolution, about 2000, I attended a talk by Andrew Neil. I was at Informix at the time in the UK, working in London.
Okay.
And I attended a talk by Andrew Neil, who was at the time the editor of the Sunday Times. He's a famous media personality, still is. Mm-hmm. And he, at the time, and it was really early then, and it wasn't at all obvious, the internet boom had not started yet. It was about to start. And he said that the internet revolution was not about the tech. It was about the mobilization of capital.
Interesting.
And he paralleled it with building the railways. Anybody can build a railway, just put tracks down. But what allowed the railways to be built and allowed the commerce to occur, which was as a result of the railways, even though many of the railway companies went bust later on. But the capital was raised, it built the railways, everything was in place. And a lot of technology companies are about the mobilization of capital. And I think that's a really good point. Then, there has to be an appetite and a history, of successful outcomes that encourages investors.
Yeah, I read that actually, I think it's going to be sometime in January next year that IIT from India, they're going to open a campus here. I think that'll be huge for the UAE and the region. I hope that we're going to see more students living in the UAE join a prestigious campus like this. Obviously, there's already the Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI in Abu Dhabi, which is also focused on this field, because one of the things I feel like for a lot of the people here, even if they were interested in the industry, they weren't able to pursue it. Maybe they could get into electronic engineer like yourself, but or computer science. Yes, you do have those degrees, but I think the way that this industry, particularly how AI is transforming so quickly, we didn't have the right academic institutions to support that, and that's why you'd find a lot of people leaving the country, going overseas, and sometimes if they do very well, they just get taken up very quickly in one of those big tech companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps when you have more academies and so on and so forth. The talent pool is pretty good, I must say. I think it's also markets matter. You need the market to sell the product into.
Yeah.
So if you're a Google or and you're in the United States, it's a big market. So you have a big domestic market before you have to run up the costs of going international.
Yeah.
And you see that here because there's some companies here who were born in the UAE. There was a company, I can't remember the name now, which did bookings for hairdressers and barbers and so on. So it's an e-commerce type of thing. They started here, then they moved to London. But the move to London was for access to capital. Because of the capital markets.
Okay.
So that is important, but your home domestic market where you're going to sell the product is also important.
That's true. Well, so in your view, where do you see you've come here first in 1991?
Yes.
And now fast forward 2023, clearly there's a lot more buildings, a lot more highways, lots of I don't know, everything. Lots of people now living in the UAE compared to that time. Where do you see? Of course, the UAE's announced a lot of different plans. We have the 2040 Dubai plan. There's the 2030 plan. There's the 2071 Centennial UAE Centennial plan. What is your vision? Where do you see how things are going to progress in your industry, in your field, and everything?
Yeah, I think you can see the progress and you can see the rate of progress. As you said, I mean, I've been on and off between here and the UK and the majority here for more than 30 years now. And I can see the rate of progress. I can see all the enabling technologies, be they the 5G networks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the building where I live, I just saw some inverted domes in the corridors and things. This is a network are putting inside the building to make the speeds even faster, I guess, or better reception. So you can see the investment on infrastructure. You can see the enablers with payment. Payments is a very important thing. A lot of eases. You can see the enablers in terms of geolocation to deliver things to people. You see that in neighboring countries as well. So there's a big focus on all these enablers. So it makes life much easier. How do I see it moving forward? I see all the things which you think, all the conveniences that you want to have are starting to be delivered. I went through the smart tunnel, I guess it's called, at the airport. Isn't that magic?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, wow, where's the barrier? No barrier.
Yeah.
And you think that's absolute magic.
Yeah.
And I think it makes everybody's life a little bit better, a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, so you've got a lot of accolades, Sam. Obviously listed on Forbes, Middle East last year in 2022. What are your next goals? What are you expecting to do next? What do you want to achieve that you haven't done yet?
So lots of things.
Because you're very still young in spirit and everything, you know, and you look great. Exactly. So I can see that. So like, I want to know what's next for you.
So if I knew, I'd tell you. But I mean, it's that's one of the pleasures of this business, that there's so many pleasant surprises. There's so many opportunities, and I think one should always keep open-minded in this business. And if I had a piece of advice for younger people, stay open-minded.
Yeah.
Read, listen as much as you can. Keep up to date with what's going on around you. Just wind the clock. I do something. I always wind the clock back 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And I think to myself, what is here now which wasn't here then? And it's a long list.
Yeah, it is. It always is a long list. Yeah.
I can think of 10 things which are really big now, which were almost non-existent 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And at any point in time, you can do that exercise.
Yeah.
And it shows you the value of hindsight, but it also shows you the value of being spatially aware. Keeping your eyes open for your surroundings. No, look, Sam, I thank you so much for joining us here at Zeno Talks and sharing your insights and your journey into this tech world and you started at I guess an airline industry, and now you are completely the full-on tech and holding a great position. So continue doing what you're doing, and all the best. Thank you very much, Omar.
Yeah,
very nice
so
to meet
much.
you.
Thank you.
All the best.